So men, hear me out. I'm actually defending you here. This cuts both ways. In essence, it was normally understood in the culture of Israel at that time, and also in the culture of the world in which the Bible was first translated, that if there was going to be abuse of a physical kind in a marriage, it was almost always going to be the husband perpetrating it. Up until extremely recently in the United Kingdom, Tony, a wife was legally defined as the property of her husband. I mean, legally, the statute up until very recently, and far more recently than you and I should be comfortable with, defined a woman in a marriage as the legal property of her husband. In essence, a husband had property rights over his wife, which is one of the reasons why up until recently spousal rape was not a crime. Because I can't, in the word or in the twisted logic of that law, I can't rape someone who I have property rights over. Why is this important for the rest of today? Because you need to interpret the Bible in two ways in this light. One, where are the misogynistic filters? And secondly, even with a misogynistic filter, how come scripture is still so clear about what is wrong in the way a woman is treated? Even this misogynistic filter gave us this verse, right? If you don't treat her with consideration, verse 7, as a delicate vessel, and with honor as fellow heir, someone say honor, as a fellow heir, meaning even in misogynistic Israel, and even through the misogynistic lens of 16th century Europe, God was clear. If you don't treat that woman, one, as an equal human being under God, fellow heir of the grace of life, and secondly, as a weaker vessel, meaning there are things, man, that you will be okay being done to you, you should not do to her. If you've ever paid for postage before, you know what it means to pay for something to be sent as fragile. Or if you've received something fragile before, it's wrapped specially, it's marked fragile, and it's subject to a different standard of care. The postie can just throw the normal parcel in the van, but the one that says fragile is carried. This is God. See, this misogynistic quote and unquote filter still instructs. Tony, let's look at this again. Number one, treat her with consideration. You know, I'm big on context. So this is in the same passage as wives submit to your husband. Every time God tells a wife to submit to a husband, there is a clause almost immediately after saying something of this nature. Ephesians 5 says it. We just looked at it. 1 Peter 3 says it again. It says so that your prayers will not be hindered. In essence, God is saying, Tony, I will not talk to a man that is abusive to his wife. Now, I want to argue. All the women were happy, I assume. Some of you are quiet tonight. But I assume all the women were happy when I said we have to remove the misogynistic filter. In essence, in a culture where it was almost impossible for a woman to at least be physically abusive to her husband. The Bible was written in that culture originally and then translated in a similar culture in 16th century England and Europe. And so when it says, you know, how a man should treat his wife, we should be able to infer the opposite as well, understanding who God is. So it's not saying, women, you can abuse your husbands. That misogynistic filter works both ways. It works to your benefit. It also works against you when it comes to placing that same standard upon you. But God is saying here, Tony, I will not talk to a person who abuses their spouse. Now, I want to ask you a question. If God says, I will not talk to a person who abuses their spouse, who are we as the church to tolerate that standard of behavior?